Hi, I'm Jonny Strinati, sound designer and producer, and in this video for Sample Market, I'm going to be showing you some of the sequencing and production techniques I employed when creating the UK Garage and two-step sample pack for Sample Market's hyperlabel. We'll be working with Logic Pro version 10.6 and a series of plugins in this video. However, these techniques could be applicable regardless of what DAW you're working in. I prepared a drum kit here for sounds we'll be using in this walkthrough. Nothing too complex and fairly familiar sounds. A nice punchy kick drum, some classic drum machine sounds, some percussive hits for a more organic flavour, and a series of different claps and snares that we can layer up. By selecting the whole kit and clicking and dragging into our tracks window in Logic, we can quickly generate a drum machine designer track, automatically generating quick sampler instruments for each individual drum hit. Once created, we can right-click in the workspace area and create a pattern region. This provides us with a very effective method for quickly sketching out our drum groove in a step sequencer. By changing the number of steps in the sequence to 32, this means that we'll be working with a 2-bar loop in our step sequencer. We begin placing a kick on the first downbeat and scatter a few more throughout our 2-bar loop, making sure there's plenty of space in between the kick drum hits for the shuffly loose hi-hats that we'll add shortly. Then we place snare and clap hits on the upbeats. We'll be using a combination of 4 hits for our snare, 2 different claps that will provide flavour, a drum machine snare that provides the body, and an extra percussion hit that adds a bit of mid-range pop. We then sequence the 2 drum machine hats, with 1 hi-hat playing 16th notes, except not placing a hit on the downbeats, and the other hi-hat just placing 1 or 2 hits here and there. We can then engage Logic's Edit Mode selector and use the Velocity Edit Mode to tweak the velocities of these hi-hats, which generates a much more humanized feel. We then add the 808 hat and shaker, 1 or 2 hits in each bar, almost in a talk and response fashion. Finally, we add a couple of rim shots towards the end of the second bar. With our hits in place, it's time to add the all-important swing to our groove that without it just wouldn't sound like a garage beat. First, we right-click on our pattern region and convert it to a MIDI region. And from there, we can then right-click again and choose Split by Note Pitch, which separates all the hits out onto their own MIDI channel, allowing for much easier arrangement and mixing of these sounds. In our Logic template, you can see that we have a series of Machiner and MPC swings that we've manually loaded. However, these can be found online easily enough if you do a search for Machiner and MPC swings. Of course, you can try Logic's inbuilt grooves here, but I've always found them to be a bit lacking in terms of creating traditional house and garage style swing. Ableton, however, does provide MPC swings in the native library, so be sure to experiment with those if you're an Ableton user. For UK garage styles and two-step styles, we can get away with very extreme swing settings, and going all the way to 47% with the Machiner swing creates a perfectly loose swung groove. If we listen to the before and after, you'll hear the vibe generated is completely different and imperative for this style. Now let's get into the mixing and production of our drum loop. And on the kick, we push up the weight of the sample by boosting around 4 dB at 50k with an EQ. We also dip -1 dB around 1 kHz, a frequency range where there's a lot of energy coming from our snare and claps already. We add some low frequency cuts to all our snare and clap sounds to remove any rumble that might interfere with our kick. And on our percussion hit, we pitch the sound down -4 semitones for a deeper percussion hit, and also tweak the envelope to remove the decay from the sound. We do a similar thing with the envelope on our second clap. This time rolling off some of the high frequencies using Quick Sampler's low pass filter. We also add Isotope's imager to this clap. A great technique when stacking claps and snares in this way is to add width to one of your layers for an increased stereo image. On our drum machine snare, as well as shortening the decay, we also decide to pitch this sample right up to +7 semitones. It gives the beat a much more energetic vibe. On our first hi-hat, we tune this down -3 semitones, pan it to the left slightly, and really shorten down the envelope. Short, snappy envelopes will tend to work well in this style. With such a swung groove, lots of splash and decay on everything could lead to a messy overall feel. Our next hi-hat gets a similar treatment. Super short decay time, and this time we sweep up the pitch to +2 semitones. For our 808 hat, we switch the Quick Sampler instrument to classic mode, which provides a different envelope shape. This means we can play with the length of the note in the MIDI sequence for a bit more variation, extending the second note out slightly. We then proceed to add a reverb on a bus channel. With the reverb set to 100% wet mix, we can then apply small amounts of the same reverb to all the tracks in our drum group minus the kick drum. We've opted for a plate reverb, perfect for drum sounds, not adding too much decay, but at the same time giving all our drum sounds a little bit of ambience. And finally, the bus processing. A great method for producing drums is to process them as a group. My personal approach is generally to apply a series of subtle effects that each add a little touch to the overall sound, rather than opting for any extreme processing at this stage. We kick off with an instance of FabFilter's Pro MB for some multi-band compression, calling up the punch and leveling 02 preset from the mix bus folder. This adds some increased punch and clarity to the drums. We then add PSP's mix saturator for some tape style saturation. Using the tape 1 shape, we push up the saturation to 54% and dial the mix down to 38%. We follow this up with PSP's micro warmer, increasing the drive whilst rolling down the output to level compensate. We also increase the knee until we see the needles moving a little. The micro warmer is also adding a small amount of multiband compression and limiting. And by increasing the drive, we're helping to add a warm and analog vibe to the drums. Finally, we add an instance of OX Sound Spiff with the boost setting engaged. We boost the transient content in the drum loop around the mids and highs. Thus further enhancing the punch of our drum loop. If you don't have a copy of Spiff, another transient shaper can be employed here for a similar effect. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you wanted to check out the UK Garage and 2-step sample pack I put together for Sample Market's Hyper label, check out the link that's included in the description box.